So first, thank you so much, everybody, for joining virtually for our first 2026 Environmental Roundtable. I know this isn't, our normal format, but just with everything going on with the weather recently, it made sense for us to do it this way. But disclaimer going forward, we do intend to have the in-person meetings with lunch for the remainder of 2026. So just a quick little GNRC roundtable intro, since it's our first meeting, and just in case anybody hasn't joined before, we are the Greater Nashville Regional Council, GNRC. We are a development district that covers a 13 to 17 county portion of Upper Middle Tennessee, depending on which project we are working on. And we offer a variety of services to sort of generally improve quality of life for Middle Tennesseans. We are the designated area agency on aging and disability. We provide economic and community development services, transportation planning services, and a variety of community and regional planning services, which includes the environmental planning team and what we do here. And the Environmental Roundtable specifically was created by GNRC in 2020 to give an environmental input to the RTP update, the Regional Transportation Plan. And it's sort of remained ever since as a group to sort of just convene and discuss hot topic environmental issues and give input on our other regional planning initiatives. So with that quick GNRC introduction, let's get into the bulk of today. Just a second here. Oh, okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Sorry, just making sure. Oh, my goodness. I can't see where all of you went. All right, there you are. Okay. All right, so first we are going to go through our welcome and introductions as normal, and then we will cover our regional disaster recovery and resiliency planning, just going over a quick overview of what that is, and then getting into the main point, which is our disaster recovery and resiliency toolkit that we are developing. And then we'll have our around the table session where anyone here can sort of, give input on what their organization's working on, any important events coming up, things like that. And with our virtual format today, we'll get to that again when we get there, but it'll probably be best if we use the raising hand little icon if you have something to share at that point. And then we will go over our upcoming activities at GNRC, our other planning work, and then we will adjourn. So a bit of a shorter agenda than normal today, so it's possible we won't hit our full hour and a half, but let's get into it with our introductions. So pretty standard here. We're going to go through your name and organization, and then answering the question, which is very timely and relates to our rest of our discussion. What is your number one disaster emergency kit essential? Or if you do not have a disaster emergency kit, maybe what is one item you would have loved to have in our most recent disaster that hit us a few weeks ago? So I'm going to make this easy, I'll just go through our names here and call you guys out one by one, just by who I see on the screen here. So we will start, well, I will start first, and then I'll pass it along. So I am Skylar Ellis. I'm an environmental planner with GNRC. And one item that is essential in my disaster kit and that I was very happy to have when my power went out for 3 days was a flashlight. And I will pass it over to Maddie.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Maddie Bowles. I'm also with the Greater Nashville Regional Council. One thing that I did not have, but that I wish that I had when my power went out was a radio that uses batteries, because I think that would have saved me maybe a lot of heartache.
We'll go to Jessica now.
Hi, good morning. Jessica Hill with GNRC as well. One of my essential disaster emergency kits, in addition to a flashlight, is keeping a blanket in my car.
It's a good one. Next, Kendra Middlebrook.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kendra Middlebrook. I am an epidemiologist and program manager for the Environmental Epidemiology program at TDH's central office. And I don't have a disaster kit, but I think I probably want like some electric hand warmers or a flashlight.
Hand warmers sound good. All right, next, Heidi McIntyre Wilkinson.
Hello, Heidi McIntyre Wilkinson with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, Land and Water Stewardship section. And my essential item is a lantern that seconds as a phone charging bank so that I can keep my cell phone charged.
Very nice. Thank you. And next, Clarissa Cahill.
Hi, everyone. I'm Clarissa Cahill with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Regional Director of External Affairs in the Nashville region. I do not have a disaster kit, but I would want a landline phone.
Also very good. Next, Bill Harple.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I have batteries that I can keep my cell phone going. We were very blessed. We probably didn't have 150 people off for more than 3 hours the entire time. So the majority of us in Clarksville had our power the entire time. So we felt kind of blessed.
Those sound great. I need some of those. All right, next, Sam Marshall.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sam Marshall with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture in the Land and Water Stewardship section, where I work with Heidi. And my answer is kind of similar to what Heidi said. I'd like to have a large power bank that you can recharge all the other things in my disaster kit, lanterns and flashlights and cell phone and that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Next up here is Catherine Price, and she put a message in the chat. They can't unmute at the moment, but Catherine's with Cumberland River Compact, and they have extra water bottles in their emergency kit. Thank you, Catherine. Next, Jennifer Westerholm.
Hi, Jennifer Westerholm with Metro Nashville, Department of General Services. Not as relevant to this most recent emergency, but most of the time it's tornadoes that we're, thinking about. And so our family always gathers our bike helmets and our sneakers, and we just set them out just in case right next to the basement door so that if we have to get up in the middle of the night, we can slip on our helmets and our sneakers and go down in case there's, falling debris or broken glass that we have to walk on or things like that. So sneakers and helmets.
Great, thank you. Being from New York, I wouldn't have thought of that, so thank you. Next, Erin Hutchins.
Hi, I'm Erin Hutchins with the State of Tennessee's Economic Development Division, and I cover the Nashville region. And wish I could fit a generator in my emergency kit, but I guess for the sake of space, I'll say batteries, extra batteries, and flashlights.
Great, thank you, Erin. Next, Sarah Elliott.
Good morning, everyone. Sarah Elliott, State Health Plan Director at the Tennessee Department of Health. This time we had a really fancy battery pack where we were able to charge our phones and electric hand warmers, and the battery pack even had a solar power thing on it. So in the event we ran out of the battery, we could recharge the battery pack. So I will never not have that again. That was great.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah. Next, Natalie Krishy. Hope I'm pronouncing that one right.
Yes, you got it. My name is Natalie Krishy. I'm an environmental protection specialist with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, and I wish that I had a propane stove to heat up boiling water, anything, food, anything hot, anything hot.
That's a good one too. Thank you, Natalie. Next, Emily Leonard.
Hi, everyone. Emily Leonard. I'm with Tennessee's Department of Environment and Conservation in our Office of Policy and Planning here in Nashville. I will also take that boiling ability for propane. I really was very sad when I realized, oh, I can't make coffee. So I would love to have some method to do that. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Next, Gray Perry.
Hey everybody, Gray Perry with the Cumberland River Compact, our stream restoration division manager, and my emergency kit always has insulin and all of my associated medical supplies in it.
Very good. Thank you, Gray. Next, Jennifer Lawler.
Hey there. Good morning, Jennifer, or afternoon. I don't know what's going on. Jennifer Lawler, Director of Research and Analytics for the Greater Nashville Regional Council. I would have said a flashlight, but somebody else said it. What I found to be essential this time around was my pet carriers. I was short one pet carrier and I had to put a cat in the back seat and he was like straddling the headrest like a little pony, which was not safe for anybody involved. So yes, pet supplies.
That's a good one. I too had a friend who shoved their cat in a backpack. So, all right. Next, Hannah Shealy.
Hey everyone, I'm Hannah and I'm a GIS analyst at the Greater Nashville Regional Council. And something I'm glad I had on hand was just some cold and flu medicine because I did end up getting sick that weekend and that was very helpful to have on hand.
Yeah. Well, I'm very sorry you got sick, Hannah. Next, Pat Couples, and Pat also put a message in the chat. Pat's from the Sierra Club, Tennessee State Director. They're unable to come off mute right now. And they have a hand crank radio / flashlight and a solar panel / battery. Interesting. Thank you, Pat, for sending the message. Next, Nikki Thompson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki Thompson from TDEC Air Pollution Control. I would have scissors in my emergency kit. So my husband is prior military and we have MREs for, so it's those meal packets but they come in a package that you need to open. And then we also have batteries, but you need to open the battery pack. So I would have scissors or a knife or some sharp object that I can open the other essential things that I have in my kit.
Great, thank you. Next, Debelina.
Hi everyone, this is Debulina. I have one flashlight and Tylenols as my emergency kit.
Very nice. Thank you, Debelina. Next, Dennis Molina. Dennis Molina, did you hear me? Oh, okay. No problem at all. That's right. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat real quick, you're welcome to. And anyone who wants to know who Dennis is can go check it out there. All right. Final person, Reginald Archer.
Hello, everybody. Reginald Archer, Tennessee State University. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Environmental Sciences. And I also have one of those hand crank radio flashlight solar combinations, but I like to keep my hand sanitizer and wipes. Those come in handy when everything else runs out.
Great, thank you. All right, well, it appears I need to get some more high-tech equipment for my next disaster. But all right, thank you everybody for introducing yourselves. Next, we are going to get into our first item of business, disaster recovery and resiliency. And I'm going to pass it over to Jessica to start us off here.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us. And I'm going to talk through a little bit about GNRC's Disaster Recovery and Resiliency Grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration, the EDA. But first, just to give us all a frame of reference and why this is important and how it's changed. So what are the disasters that we talk about in Tennessee? For this case, we're talking about natural disasters. So it's any major adverse event caused by earth, the force majeure, as our lawyers like to call them. Those things, storms, flooding, fire, tornado, hurricane, that may result in loss of life, property damage, and social or economic disruptions. And as we found 2 weeks ago, ice is one of those things that can have significant loss of social and economic disruptions, property damage, and unfortunately, loss of life due to either extreme cold or to people unfortunately using generators or indoor heating sources incorrectly. So these are things that we want to prevent and prepare for as much as we are able to. So what's been changing, what's been happening? So since 2000 in Tennessee, we've had 49 federal disaster declarations, and this is important when we talk about grant funding from the federal government, whether it be through FEMA or U.S. Department of Commerce. It needs to be a federal disaster declaration. So probably if you have lived in Tennessee and Middle Tennessee, you've seen this firsthand. But since 2010, we've had 35 disaster declarations. And then in the last 6 years, since 2020, we've had 19. So we're seeing them occur more frequently, and the severity is increasing as well. And here in Middle Tennessee, typically, we see flooding, tornadoes, severe storms with those high winds, and some winter weather. But this has been the year of the ice storms for a week and a half. So hopefully I think, what is it, the first false spring, and then we'll hit our next winter again in March. All right, so next slide, Kyler. So just to give you a sense, going back again, that the 26 years, these are the disaster declarations year by year, and you can see that they're increasing every year. So we're, again, just an illustration representing that increase in the degree, the number, but also we're seeing them increase in severity too. So next slide. And then looking again at the type of incidents, most often the highest number is our severe storms with flooding, tornadoes. We're hitting tornado season. I know everybody loves to hear that, but we're in our spring tornado season. So as Jennifer mentioned, I have a snowboarding helmet and I keep it in my my half bath, which is my storm shelter. But it's smart to have those things prepared so you're not doing it at 3 a.m., which always seems to be when that happens. So next slide. So why this matters and how we, GNRC requested funding from the US EDA. So this is their EDA's Disaster Supplemental Grant. We applied back in response to the 2021 flooding that happened out on our western region by the Tennessee River. So the Waverly flood, for many of you would recall that. And so that was helped initiate our response or application to the U.S. Department of the EDA to request this with 3 primary deliverables. And I'm going to focus more on the last one, but just to give you an understanding of what we're working on with these grant funds is, one, making sure that we're reaching out and coordinating with existing partnerships and members of the public and civic leaders in those areas that have been declared a federal disaster, to make sure that the process, the outcomes, and the products that we're creating and doing are beneficial to our region, to the local governments, to our nonprofits, and to the broader general public. The second area that we're providing assistance with is through technical assistance by working with those communities that did have disaster declaration since 2021 to update any of their long-range plans, their policies, codes, ordinances, regulations to help prepare them against future disasters, but also assisting them with writing and applying for other disaster supplemental grants or other federal funds and state funds that may help them address some of these resiliency and recovery needs. And then the third, what we're hoping to get your input on today as experts in the environmental field and in your communities is really around this disaster recovery and long-term resiliency toolkit. And our intent, there's a lot of toolkits out there, and Skylar is going to go through some of our research momentarily. But the intent is not to duplicate. We don't want to recreate the wheel. We want to add value where there's a gap. And so we want to provide communities either access to the best self-assessment tools that are out there. And if there's a gap, filling that gap with a supplemental assessment. We've pulled together and researched best practices, model policies, and now we're tailoring them to be localized recommendations to our GNRC 13 county footprint to help them prepare and minimize the damage caused by the disasters that we've seen. There's a lot of lessons learned with this most recent ice storm that we can add some additional measures and approaches into the toolkit with this, I guess, the 30-year ice storms, they're calling it every 30 years, it seems. So our goal is to develop this in partnership through conversations with stakeholders and community feedback. So you all are one of our stakeholders that we want to make sure that we hear from your expertise, where your areas of concern or see the needs for, and then developing it in partnership with our local governments to understand where we can serve them best. So I'm going to hand this over to Skylar to talk through the research that our team has done on existing toolkits and other best practices before I get into a conversation and a discussion with you all. So Skylar, I hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. All right. So as Jessica began to explain, sort of our first step throughout this process was a peer scan of other disaster toolkits or alternate disaster resources. And this was sort of meant to just familiarize ourselves with the available resources out there and get a general handle on what a toolkit should encompass and what ours should have mainly. So as we got into this, the first thing I noticed while researching was that a lot of these different resources, what they'll call a toolkit is not always an actual toolkit. So while these definitions might seem very simple and obvious to some of you, it was helpful throughout this process to sort of make these definitions of what each type of tool is and how that can work into our toolkit on some level. So first, broadly, a toolkit is usually a website and it contains a myriad of disaster resiliency tool types. So it's a one-stop shop that's going to have pretty much anything you need to do your disaster planning and recovery work. So that includes the self-assessment tools, plans, guides, and any extra resources needed for resilience planning. The second type is a self-assessment tool. This is probably the most discrete specific tool. And it's typically a scorecard or questionnaire document. An Excel type spreadsheet format is the most common there. And those are used to self-assess the potential hazards and risks facing your community and your community's ability to respond to those hazards. Next is a plan, and a disaster plan directs the planning for and remediation of disaster events. So it provides specific directives for what you're going to do to respond to disasters and work to prevent them in a certain state, region, or locality. And these are often included as examples in toolkits meant to sort of show anyone using the toolkit how you might make a plan, what a good plan looks like, things like that. And then the final type here is a disaster guide. So this differs slightly from a plan in that it's more of a step-by-step framework with best practices and sort of how to conduct resiliency planning from start to finish. So, you know, what to do first, who to reach out to, how to make certain plans, things like that. And again, these are often included in the toolkit as a supplemental resource to help people using the toolkit begin their own disaster planning work. So once we had these four, you know, sort of categories of what all the tools were, it was helpful for us to sort of rank which of these resources were the best and why. So this list here, these are all links. When I send this PowerPoint out after the meeting, you can go through here and check any of these out if you'd like to. So we've split them up here based on federal, state, local, regional, and other sources. And then you'll notice the little TGP icons to the right is indicating whether it is a toolkit or a guide, a plan, or S for self-assessment tool. So you'll notice here that like the second one here called Regional Resilience Toolkit, it calls itself a toolkit, but in substance, it's actually a guide, and it doesn't quite have the level of comprehensiveness that you need to be a toolkit. So the really some standout ones here, I'm not going to go through this whole list, but just some I do want to touch on is mainly this Regional Resiliency Guidebook and Toolkit from the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, and that's Miami Valley, Ohio, not Miami, Florida. But this one is very standout. It's pretty much the only truly regional toolkit that there was. A lot of them are more on the federal level, or they're, you know, much more localized. But this one is specifically meant for, you know, like a development district type of region. And it just has, it's very well designed, has a lot of great tools, a really nice like interactive mapping portion of it that we really liked. So that one has been a big inspiration for us. And then second, I wanted to note this disaster resilience scorecard for cities from the UN. And that's because when we were looking at various self-assessment tools people have used, and specifically in the disaster area, this one from the UN was by and large the most used by everybody. And even if people were not directly using the UN's tool, the tool they made pretty much directly followed what the UN's tool does. So moving on, keeping that, you know, list in mind of what our standouts were, what stood out about those? So first off, they were very user-friendly, easy to navigate, and had clear direction. A toolkit or any of the tools within it is not going to be very helpful if it's confusing to get through and you don't know what these tools do, you don't know how to use them. So that was very important. Second is that it contains a comprehensive array of tool types and resources. So we want a toolkit that's going to include all of those things. We want the self-assessment tool. We'd like some guides, some plans, some extra resources, anything that's going to help our communities to do their disaster planning. Second, like I mentioned specifically with the Miami Valley example, interactivity of data dashboards and modeling tools. It definitely stood out when people had a very easy to navigate interactive way to sort of map hazards in your community and look at all the data in a very, easily manageable way. And then next, they were aesthetically and visually pleasing. We like something that looks nice. If the website looks like it was built in 1981, that's not very great. We don't want that. We want it to look modern. We want it to be visually nice. And the next, reliance by other governments, organizations. So if there was one particular resource that a lot of people are using, like that UN scorecard I mentioned, that sort of indicates that it's a really reliable tool. It's good, strong, something nice for us to use. And then next, frequently used formats. So again, using that self-assessment example, most all of those self-assessments use some sort of spreadsheet format. There were a couple that were a little different, but using those sort of tried and true trusted methods. So now that we figured out the sort of background, what is a toolkit, what should go in a good toolkit, in an ideal world, what we would love ours to look at, we then needed to figure out what our toolkit needs. And for that, I'm going to pass it back to Jessica here.
Awesome. Thank you, Skylar. And I appreciate that. Really what we want to hear from you all is your perspective of what a Middle Tennessee region toolkit focused on disaster resiliency and recovery needs to be to meet our local governments and our community members' needs to help prepare for these disasters, because they are, again, as I already said, they're becoming more frequent and intense, and the effects are broader. We're a more urbanized region. We have a lot of infrastructure that is reaching the period where it's going to be replaced. Are we designing these systems and these networks in our built environment to withstand or be at a less risk of damage? And is there redundancy in our systems to support people and our economy and protect property? So really, this is where we want to focus our conversation with you all today, is on what needs to be part of the toolkit from your perspective. So next slide. Where we feel like we have ability to provide to help fill in a gap for our region with some more focus is on what's termed as a pre-disaster risk reduction or mitigation strategies. So these are the proactive long-term efforts to reduce or eliminate risks to human life and property before disasters occur. We're not looking at the response to disasters. So like when the fire department responds, we want to focus on what can we be doing now when we're not in a disaster phase that can improve our response and recovery. So thinking about that, as a regional planning organization, working with local governments, what are strategies that are related to the design and construction of our community? So the built environment, the buildings that we build, we live in, we work in, the utilities and the systems that provide the water, the energy, our roads and bridges and transportation system that connects people. These are usually and most often the essential parts of our communities that are hit the hardest during disasters. And local governments, I know many of you on the call today work for a local government, and we partner with nonprofits very often in response and recovery. So we all have a major role and serve as a critical function to reduce these disaster risks. So that's where we as an organization feel like we have some knowledge and skill set to be able to fill in this this gap and help our communities do these risk reduction strategies. So with that in mind, the way that we are approaching the toolkit development is to provide a process and tools for jurisdictions to assess, plan, and implement changes to their infrastructure, but also looking at what are their codes and standards and regulations related to planning, to buildings, to the way that they invest in capital improvement. So the way that we want to approach this is having focus group conversations with the key kind of categories of people that are involved in disasters. So our disaster responders and emergency management professionals, our planners and policymakers, and then the utility and transportation infrastructure sectors. And we want to confirm, because we don't want to suppose or make assumptions. We want to confirm what they already are using and what they may need. What are the challenges that they face and what do they need to address first? What's their priorities? So we want to confirm these things so that we ensure that the toolkit that's created with the federal funds is not duplicative and it's providing a new resource to our communities. So I'm going to move us into the next section of the topic, which is open discussion. And so I've got some prompt questions. I know you're probably like, man, I was just about to eat some lunch. So I apologize, but I really want to hear from you all. Your input will help us as we go out and have conversations and start to build this toolkit. So if any of these questions, is way more important in your mind and you want to answer it first, feel free to raise your hand and unmute. But the goal is just to have a conversation and build off of one another and come up with some direction and guidance to our team as we proceed. But I'll read the prompts for those of you that may not be on a screen and commuting, traveling. But we've got 4 prompts. Prompt 1 is, what are the most significant barriers hindering communities from preparing for disasters? Second prompt, what do local government leaders, staff need to help close the gap between knowing about risks and taking action to reduce those risks? Prompt number 3, what is your role in helping our communities prepare for and or recover from a disaster? And then what would you like it to be if it's different? And then the 4th prompt is, if one issue could be addressed before the next disaster occurs, what should it be? So I will open it up. If anybody's got a burning, like, man, I really want to answer this. Please, again, raise your hand, unmute, and I'd love to hear y'all's perspectives and thoughts. You didn't know this was going to be an interactive Teams conversation. Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, this is really good food for thought. And I think one of the things that the most recent, like Storm Fern, has brought up for me is like, we all sort of know on some level that something like that could happen or that a tornado is likely to happen, but it's when it's not happening and it's a beautiful day outside and the sun is shining and we have a million other things to do. I mean, part of it, I guess what I'm saying is it almost feels like it comes down to something about human psychology, right? Like we a little bit live in the moment, we a little bit live for the short term, we a little bit don't want to think about these awful things that could happen. And we have a lot to do in our daily lives and our personal, professional endeavors that like creating the literal bandwidth to spend the time and energy on this sort of thinking is an ask in and of itself. And so in that respect, like commend GNRC for putting this toolkit together to provide in a way sort of a shortcut, right, to municipalities in the region of like, okay, you don't have to start from scratch. Like here's a great starting space or starting point with the toolkit. But I do feel like that piece of, it's when you're in it, it's like, oh yeah, we should have been doing all this, but when you're not, it's hard to put the attention to it. And I think resource constraints too, just funding was something that really came up for me with this last one, is like, yeah, we could have buried all of our utilities, we could have done a lot of things, and those things would cost umpteen millions and millions. And it's like deciding as a society that preparedness is something that we want to spend money on, when that means spending money on that will mean we don't spend it on something else. So how do we make, resiliency a priority on a psychological level and at the budgetary level? I feel like are two kind of big hurdles that are coming up for me. I'm also going to just put Metro's Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Plan, our CARP, in the chat as another thing for folks to look at as we're reading all these great resources, because it's I think there's a lot of overlap there too. And some of the things you mentioned, Jessica, contemplating, the infrastructure improvements to the building codes, all of that, like a lot of those things have been contemplated in our plan. But to your point, actually operationalizing and implementing this plan is really, that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's where I think we have to make some hard choices.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. Pat, I didn't know that teams started this, but they started numerically, like putting you as you got your hand raised, which I really appreciate. So Pat, you're second.
Yeah, the stack. It's a good feature. Yeah, I think identifying that like these 100-year storms or 30-year storms, like I've been in a few locations over the last 10 or 20 years, but I've experienced a lot of 100-year storms, which seems kind of silly to call them that now. Um, and so like identifying that these things are happening faster than they are is something that we do at Sierra Club. And it comes across as negative, I think, but it can be used in planning. But I think that something I've been thinking about is being able to think about like things like a simple thing like burying lines. Like we lost power in East Nashville where I am, but my friend lives in a community that's a recent development in Brentwood. They don't have any power lines in their community, and they were unaffected by the whole thing. Even from a point of just getting out the door and driving around, we couldn't leave our neighborhood because of a utility lines being down. But in order to do that at like a cost-effective rate, I think it has to be if you wanted to bury a line, the right time to do that is maybe when a transportation situation is happening, a new road is going in. And so some connectivity between utilities and different groups, if NDOT or TDOT was doing work on sidewalks, that's a great time for utility to be burying lines at that moment. So I think that like coordination between those different entities would be key, so that NES isn't saying it would cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to tear up the road and then fix it. If we are tearing up a road anyways, that's the time to do it. So just a thought.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. All right, Clarissa.
Hey guys, I just wanted to add, I guess specifically on talking point 3, that it was so crazy right before Winter Storm Fern. We hosted for the Nashville region, we hosted the natural disaster workshop, and we typically invite city and county mayors and EMA directors, and just anybody that might be locally that might benefit from having that information. But and I want to say this was my first time doing it, but I want to say it's every other year when we host that natural disaster workshop. And so there's experts from TDEC Office of Emergency Management, all of the divisions that play a role in, that would be more so that recovery or remediation for, when the local governments or the communities are ready to, do that cleanup and debris management, whether they need to, need a permit, or whether they're exempt from having a permit to open burn some of that debris, and having a plan for staging the debris and getting in touch with the correct divisions to make sure that their staging debris piles are in the right the right locations or in permitted locations. And I know some of that, even to get certain federal funds, the Division of Solid Waste Management needs to approve wherever that staging location is. So that's from my perspective, that's the role that TDEC has played in that, and we were able to get that information out to the local communities. But just having that information on hand and having that plan ready to go, where you already know, like, okay, we need a plan for our staging areas, already having that in mind, like where we're going to do that, instead of having to, you're already dealing with so much in the thick of it, but having that plan ahead of time. I could see how, one of these toolkits or one of the plans or guides might be very helpful for local communities to already have certain things in place when things like this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I wish I had known that y'all were having that training. That would have been
It was
wonderful.
literally the week before, like to the point where on the day of the training, I didn't think many people would be able to come, because I know they were preparing for the storm to come. So I think we actually got a little bit less turnout because of that. People were already like, okay, I don't have time to go to this. We actually have stuff that we are doing in preparation. So, but we do have that, and we have some of that information and resources available.
Wonderful, wonderful. Reginald.
Yeah, hi. In looking at these questions and the resilience plan, climate adaptation resilience plan that you posted, I find, well, I guess it seems like the audience for these kits are responders and officials, municipalities, and I'm curious because I find that there's a disconnect, still a disconnect between the members of the community, the neighborhood, the people, and these plans. And it seems like that's where a lot of the frustration is in it, communication and just not knowing what's going on. And so I'm curious as to, if that is something that is is being thought of. Like, how do we make sure that there is a connection that, these questions, these prompts, to me, are more people centered, but the plans are not. So that's my reading of it. So I'm just would like to just to throw that out there.
Okay. No, that's always good to remind ourselves why we're doing something, and you are absolutely correct. It is very much related to people and environment, and keeping that in the forefront as we look through how to assist our communities in this resilience planning, and looking to identify best practices for the response and recovery. Because you are correct. A lot of what seems to be some of the biggest concerns and points of contention coming out of this, at least for the service area of NES, is that communication did not meet the expectations or needs of the public. So I think that's a good point. So thank you. Any other thoughts to these questions? Or if you were like, man, I can't believe you didn't ask this question and I really want to answer it. And I know we've got folks that are not in local government, but are in nonprofit. What are, in light of the ice storm and the concerns, at least in Nashville, around tree trimming, we know that there needs to be a balance of our preparations to reduce risk, but also we know that the balance needs to happen of if we're going to remove a large and also replace all the tree canopy that was lost during the ice storm. factoring that into our recovery perspectives. Does anybody have any thoughts on, from your perspective of your expertise, of what needs to be considered or not forgotten? All right. Well, if you think on this as you ponder through your day or eat lunch and you're like, man, I thought of this response now, please email anything or recommendations for people that we should be talking up to include in the disaster, the toolkit development focus groups. Please email Skylar and she'll pass that along to our team to make sure we get them involved. Really appreciate your time and thoughts this afternoon. And again, if you have any other things that you would like to share with us or people that you think we need to reach out to and follow up with them and get them involved, please let us know. Otherwise, I will pass it over to Skylar to lead us through the next item.
Almost skipped our next item there. All right, thank you, Jessica, for covering that. All right, next is our around the table time. So again, it's probably best if we use the raising hands again for this. If you have anything to share about the work you're doing, any events coming up, anything else of relevance, opening it up. Yep, Jennifer. Or wait, was someone before? Oh no, I think Pat's hands up from earlier. All right, Jennifer, you're up.
Got it. Hey, tonight is the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting. That is, the SAC is the, an ordinance group that supports the mayor's office in identifying sustainability issues and solutions for Mayor O'Connell. And so there's a meeting usually quarterly. So that meeting's happening tonight, starting at 4:30 at the Sunny West Conference Room, which is on the Fulton campus. I'll put the address, I'll put some details in the chat. But anyway, just in case anybody's interested, it usually runs 4:30 to 6 tonight. And it's a great opportunity to interface with that committee and learn about what they're doing. There's usually some really good information presented by Kendra Abkowitz in the mayor's office and others from the city. I believe tonight there's going to be a presentation from the I team, which is the innovation team that's working on some initiatives at the intersection of climate change and equity. So just wanted to put that out there, and I'll put some details in the chat.
Great, thank you so much, Jennifer. Right, does anybody else have anything to share? Clarissa, yep. Clarissa, you can go ahead if you have something to share.
Hey, I just wanted to mention that the Governor's Environmental Stewardship Award, the GIZA Award application is now open. So if you guys know anyone that's made any outstanding achievements for environmental initiatives in the region, that can be individuals, businesses, organizations, educational institutions, you can nominate them for the GIZA.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right. Oh, thank you, Jennifer, for sending that in the chat. All right, does anybody else have anything left to share? All right, looks like not. Thank you, Clarissa, for sending that in the chat as well. We'll get all that, anything that you guys have added to the chat throughout this, we'll make sure we included our notes document. So when we send out our follow-up with everything, all of that should be there as well. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else left to share for around the table, then we can keep on moving ahead to GNRC's upcoming activities. So first here, we are going to cover our regional transportation planning activities, and I will throw it back over to Jessica to cover that.
All right. So if you want to move forward, Skylar. So we're on track to release the full regional transportation plan draft for adoption in March. The details are that the Transportation Coordinating Committee will meet on March 4th, and then the Transportation Policy Board will meet on the 18th of March with a release date for public comment coming about a week prior. So we will release the draft regional transportation plan. This is for the 2050 on February 20th. So we are currently this week going through final QA/QC on our costs, the mapping, and any final questions with our local partners on the scope of their projects that are being included. So we would ask you all to review and provide any comments that you all see beginning once again on the 20th when it's released this month for public comment. Please share it with your networks. Where again, I know we've given y'all an update every quarter on the RTP, but this is the a 5-year planning document that's required for the GNRC to produce as the Metropolitan Planning Organization. It's a 25-year outlook. It programs all the anticipated federal transportation dollars to projects. And this is translates to day-to-day projects for our local governments through the Transportation Improvement Program, which is where we allocate and obligate and draw down federal dollars. So once the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan, is adopted, we continue to maintain that Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, updated with any newly prioritized projects or funding. So really looking for your review and feedback. Make sure you let us know if you've got any concerns or thoughts. And again, it will be available online for that public review beginning on the 20th.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica. And I will take back over now to give a quick update on our climate action planning work. So first, we have our greenhouse gas inventory that has been completed, and our consultants have provided us with a sort of summary report of their methodology findings. So we've begun incorporating that information into our draft CCAP report document. Second, and note like some of these dates here with these ranges, it's not quite exact because a lot of these items that we have listed here have a whole lot of, subparts underneath them where, certain tasks will be finished sort of later this month. Certain aspects of it might be finished a little more early March. So this just sort of gives us the general plan that we think we're going to hit. So next, the quantified greenhouse gas reduction measures. We have our official list completed. Thank you to everyone who gave feedback on that list through either of our last meetings where we have sought that feedback from you. And we are now, we have ICF running the modeling to see what these measures actually result in as far as emissions reductions. So once that modeling is complete, we will have some slight polishing of our measures to do, and that won't, everything will essentially stay the same at its core. It'll just be sort of light language changes, making sure that we're being as clear as possible, and just polishing that based on the results of their modeling. And we expect that to be wrapped up sometime in March. Next, the emissions reduction targets. So we have done a peer scan of alternate targets and sort of what we think we should align with. But again, post-modeling of the measures, we will refine those targets based on our final measures and, result in our actual final target. And same that we expect that to be done sometime around March. We also have our greenhouse gas emissions projections, and there are sort of two parts of this. First is the business as usual projections. Those are complete, and like the greenhouse gas inventory, I've started incorporating the report and the information behind that into our CCAP draft. The second part of that will be the implementation projections. So what our emissions will be with the implementation of our measures. And again, that's something that they will do after the initial modeling of the measures. So sometime by end of March, we expect that information to be ready. Next, benefits analysis. So we have EY beginning on their qualitative benefits analysis, which is our co-benefits and disbenefits, and this includes a LIDAC analysis. So we're currently just sort of ironing out the process to get through that, and we're going to get going with that very shortly. And then later in the process, our other consultant team, ICF, will have a sort of more quantitative modeling of that, where they do the actual cost modeling, which will sort of work into it. So again, a bit of a range there because there's some multiple things underneath that. So again, end of March is when we expect that information to be ready. And then these next two items, review of authority to implement and intersection with other funding availability. Those will be more, as in comparison to the rest of this, a bit more simple to analyze, and we expect those to be done sometime in April. Same with our workforce planning analysis. We are currently sort of ironing out the planning analysis process we want to use, how we want that section to look in our report, things like that. And we should begin working on that soon and have that wrapped up by April. And then our intent is to have a sort of rough first draft of our CCAP report done sometime around late April, very early May, and then have about a month-long period where we can do various forms of public review, maybe show our draft document at some other meetings, do some tabling activities, things like that. And then we will incorporate our public review into our final CCAP report, which will be done in June 2026. And that is the general schedule and the only update I have on CPRG. So I will now send it over to Maddie to cover solid waste APRs, watershed planning, and our brownfields. So take it away, Maddie.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have slides today, so we've kind of upgraded from my usual presentation, but I'm going to start out with a little bit about solid waste. So if any of you all are working in solid waste currently, you might be familiar with TDEC's annual progress reports. Every year around March 31st, counties and solid waste regions are required to submit what's called a solid waste annual progress report. And it essentially gives TDEC an idea of how different counties and solid waste regions, oops, Skylar, if you can go back, sorry. It basically gives the state an idea of how counties and solid waste regions are doing in regards to their recycling and diversion goals. So the state has kind of a statewide recycling and diversion goal. I think it's a 25% recycling and diversion goal. And they like to check in on how counties are doing and see what progress they're making every year. And GNRC, we receive grant funding to offer technical assistance to counties. So we can either help them get their report submitted. And for some counties, that means that we take a pretty primary role with them. So we are helping them collect data, helping type it up, making sure they get submitted, or we take a more secondary role. I kind of think of it as an on-call role. So if counties kind of have questions throughout their APR submittal process or while they're working on it, they can give us a call and we can help walk them through that. And we can also assist with materials management grant applications. So from now until March 31st and then on into the summer, we will be working on the solid waste APRs and then solid waste grant applications. And then on my next slide, I have a list of some of the grant opportunities available. So not sure how interesting this will be to all of you, but if you are interested in grants and if your organization does work with solid waste, these are some grants to be aware of. So there's the solid waste planning grant that's going to be out in September 2026. This one is interesting because the state is asking counties and solid waste regions to start updating their solid waste 10-year plans and their disaster debris management plans, which is super relevant to the conversation that we had today, and then also to everything that's been going on the past few weeks with Winter Storm Fern. So that is a grant to keep an eye out on. It's a new grant, so that one we haven't really seen before. There is a convenience center grant and the used oil grants. Those are both looking to open in June 2026. Waste reduction grant is a big one from TDEC, and so that one's not expected until fall of 2027. But it's a pretty big ticket grant, pretty competitive. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. Recycling equipment grant, September 2026, it's looking to open. And then the Tire Environmental Act program, the TEEP grant, is actually open from now until April 15th. And so that can help counties kind of fund projects that are using up recycled or old tires. And for more information, once you get the slides, you can click that link below and it'll take you to more information about all of these grants. So that's a little blurb about solid waste. And then a quick section on our brownfields work. In 2024, I think we've mentioned this a couple of times now, but GNRC applied for and received a brag identification grant from TDEC DOR to create a brownfield inventory for 11 counties within our region, and the county names are there. And we submitted our deliverable, our brownfield inventory, back in December of 2025. At the very end of December, we turned that in, and we are currently waiting for feedback from TDEC. So this one is a short and sweet section, but if you all have any additional possibly contaminated sites or ideas of brownfields to suggest to us, feel free to email that brownfields email on the screen, and we can add those to our list, because even though we've submitted our deliverable to TDEC, we don't want it to just kind of lie in wait. We want to make sure it's as up to date as possible. Yeah, great.
Yeah, would you mind sharing, if you're able to, that inventory? So we have started adopting for our DPAVE program a process for screening sites prior to breaking ground. And one of those is reviewing brownfields and any other potential special waste that might be on site. So right now we're just using the tools that we have available to us through the EPA, and I think there's like an underground storage tank inventory that TDEC has. But if there's anything else that you would suggest that would help kind of broaden our search, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, I will talk to Jennifer about that, because we've been talking about figuring out the logistics of sharing. So I think that'll be an internal conversation first, but then I'll email you and let you know what we are able to share and the sites that we have. And then Jennifer, if she's still on the call, might be a good resource in terms of just like a quick shout out of some data that we used. She and her team were kind of more on the data side of things than I was.
I'm definitely still here. Yeah, I can do a quick rundown. We used a lot of the sources that were already referenced: underground storage tanks, the location of dry cleaners, vicinity to sites that had been flagged for some other kind of investigation or remediation. We also got high vacancy tracks, which we felt was indicative of perhaps some sort of formal industrial activity. But we've done a lot of data parsing already to be able to pull out the different materials and affluences that and to kind of separate them by potential severity. Happy to figure out a way to pass what we've done over for ease of use and reference.
Awesome. Okay. Before I go to watershed plans, any other questions on either the brownfields or solid waste? Let's see. Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. Great. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, but Heidi did just send this in the chat, and so shout out for the group. I think this would be good for kind of around the table updates, but it looks like TDA is going to host a public hearing tomorrow on rulemaking for the Farmland Preservation Act. So good to check out, and then she added more information in the chat. All right, Skylar, if you will move me forward, please. Okay, awesome. Watershed-based planning. You all have seen this map probably a million times at this point, at least a good 3. But exciting, we are working in Montgomery County this year for our watershed-based plans in the Budds Creek and the Big McAdoo Creek watershed. Actually have a meeting with a couple of the folks on this call today to discuss those further. So excited to see you all again at 2. And if you would move forward, Skylar. Just a little bit about where we are with these plans. We started them in January, so we're not super far into things right now. We held our first steering committee meeting in January with our steering committee, and then I've been doing kind of one-on-one follow-ups with additional folks in between that first meeting and where we are now. And then our next steering committee, it's kind of going to be like a steering committee meeting number 1.5 is how I'm thinking about it, but it is going to be a fieldwork focused steering committee. And we're looking to do fieldwork in April 2026. And then this year we are looking to do a group stream walk with some of our steering committee members who are interested in doing some fieldwork with us. So super excited about that. Details are still kind of to be determined for that stream walk, but that's where we're at. And yeah, excited to be working on these plans this year. But that was my last update.
Great. Thank you, Maddie. All right. So next, before we adjourn, just some last few upcoming meetings to note. First, we have a regional council meeting on February 18th. And then Transportation Coordinating Committee will be March 4th, and the Transportation Policy Board will be March 18th. All of these are posted online on the GNRC calendar, and you can see the link below there. And finally, our next roundtable. We did have to reschedule this date from our original calendar invite, so I will send an update shortly for that. But our new date is May 7th, and I'm really looking forward to that meeting. We have a PFAS discussion planned, and Emily Leonard, who was here earlier but has had to leave the conversation, will be presenting on PFAS. And we are going to be meeting at a Metro Nashville water facility, so that will be very exciting. Right, and final item, adjourned. So thank you very much, everybody who joined today. I know this was a little bit different than normal, but we greatly appreciate you joining, and looks like we'll get about 15 minutes back today. Right, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.